Hi, my name is Tanya Wright, and I was asked to give a little bit of a testimony on waiting. Um, a little bit of background before I get started on that. I have been in tour now for about 7.5 years, um, and part of my waiting story starts with um, the passing of my husband about 5.5 years ago. Um, it had been a very dark point in my life, and over the next 2.5 years, I made a lot of bad choices, drinking and um, going back into some very unhealthy lifestyles. Um, Almost 3 years ago, I decided to get sober, and that starts a journey in my life. Um, the end of 2018, I started going to an assembly about an hour from where I lived. Rode in with my mother-in-law because my uh, vehicle was unreliable. Um, I lost my job in January, and which ended up being a blessing in disguise. I had been able to um, do the Sabbaths a whole lot better, and was able to start doing the feasts, and I was really excited about all of that. Um, Feast of Unleavened Bread of 2019, I had decided to get baptized in the name of Yeshua, um, and start to kind of rededicate and um, you know, gain my relationship with the Father. Um, a few months later, my mother in law had passed away, leaving my ride to and from the assembly difficult. I had a very unreliable vehicle myself. And all this kind of leads up to the waiting. Because at this point now, this has now been almost 2 years ago, I had wanted to move closer to my assembly. And so the waiting begins. I had started to look for jobs. Was filling out applications and trying to find a place to live, and none of it was happening. It was all falling through for one reason or another. Either I wasn't qualified, or I didn't have what I needed, or whatever the reasons. I just None of it was happening. I wasn't getting a job, and I wasn't getting a place. So I was still stuck an hour away with an unreliable vehicle all through 2019. The winter of 2019 into 2020 was difficult. I missed a lot of services because of weather and such. And on top of that, I have problems during the winter, anyways, and being alone made things difficult. Um, my family was trying to figure out ways of helping, and that wasn't working well, but either way, 2020, we all know what that was like. It was not a fun year for almost everybody. Beginning of 2020, things seemed to be not too bad, until the shutdown and not being able to go to the assembly, and there was good and bad that came out of that. Obviously, being alone is difficult for anybody. The fact that I didn't have a family that I could quarantine with. It was me and, well, a cat, or two cats and a dog. So that was it. Um, During that time, several of the ladies in our assembly had decided to start a chat group together, which was really nice because I so badly still wanted to be out here, and I wanted to be a part of this community. Um, but it still didn't seem like it was going to happen. I had tried again. I had gotten a job where I lived an hour away, but I still wanted to live here. So throughout the summer of 2020, I was still looking, but because of the pandemic and because of um, all the fears and struggles there, it was even more complicated to get a job or anything at that point. Um, 2020 was a very hard year for me and my family. My dad and my stepmom both were diagnosed with dementia, and trying to then navigate that as a daughter and navigate being a power of attorney and so on and so forth made things very, very hard for me. I was trying still to do all this and do it all for the most part alone. Um, I had my sisters, which I leaned on as much as I could, but the waiting was still hard. My By the end of 2020, I was ready more than I've ever been to get a new job, to get out here, to be close to my Shalom Assembly family. Um, that's what I wanted more than anything. Um, I cried out to the Father, and as you know, my niece had sent me a bunch of possible job opportunities that would be good for me, and I cried out to the Father, just pleading one of these would pan out. Filled out several applications, and again, it just seemed like one after another wasn't going to happen. There was one job that looked really promising, and I was really excited about and kind of wanted, but I wasn't qualified. Didn't have any certifications. I had a college degree, but my college degree is in graphic design, not in early childhood education. And this was a preschool teacher position, and I really wanted it. So I began to just pray about it. And so more waiting, more trusting, more praying, more leaning on my sisters because I couldn't do it alone. I can't say that I did everything right. I definitely allowed fear and concern to be a struggle for me. Anxiety was at its worst, unfortunately. Um, but I was still trusting, and I was still choosing to be faithful no matter how difficult that was. As a recovering alcoholic, that's not easy to begin with. The fact that I had been struggling with that made this process something about being faithful in the wait. There's a song that says, while I'm waiting, I will trust Him. While I'm waiting, I will praise Him. It's not about just waiting. It's about waiting well. It's about waiting with purpose and knowing and understanding that the Father has a plan for you, and it's the perfect plan, and He's going to do it in His timing, the perfect timing. Just doesn't always seem perfect for us. Sometimes my patience level isn't the best. So I'm waiting to find out anything about this application, and the first week in January they called and set up an interview, and now I'm kind of thinking, okay, at least I've got an interview, and they asked if I was willing to, get the certifications needed, and I was saying, yeah, no problem. Talking about 120 hours of schooling, and I thought, okay, I can do that. I thought I was going to have to do all that before I got the job, and I thought, a lot of stuff. But again, it was like, well, we have to bring this to the committee, and we'll let you know what our decision is. And I thought, okay, more waiting. um, Now I'm excited because it's actually something I want, really want, and the first step finally went through, and now it's a matter of waiting to know, is it even going to happen. Of course, now I'm having to look for a place because a drive an hour once a week to the assembly and back, that was kind of difficult. A drive 6 days a week, 5 days for work and once to the assembly, um, that was going to be not possible. So I started looking into um, places to live. One of the sisters from my assembly had let me know of a house that was um, going to be vacant and was going to be needing a renter like soon. Would have been a perfect house for me. 10 minutes from my assembly, 7 minutes from my job, fenced in backyard for my rather large dog. Um, it would have been perfect. Um, but there was no definitives. I filled out an application and I did what I had to do, but it seemed like she was dragging her feet, and it seemed like um, the job was dragging its feet. And finally, about mid-February, or the first week in February, I was told I needed to get my fingerprints done and all this other stuff, but I'm still waiting. I still didn't know if I had the job. I still wasn't offered the position. I was just told, well, now it's time to take the next step. Okay, the next step. Got it. Um, I was talking to the landlord here, and by mid-February, she still had no idea if I was going to have this place, and she's talking about other people who were interested in it, and she still had to, fix some issues in the bathroom, and there was just everything was up in the air still. Um, a couple weeks, or about a week later, I was finally offered the position. 3 weeks into February, after filling out the application the last week of December, I'm finally told, you have the job if you want it. Well, obviously I wanted it. So I said yes. But I still didn't have a place to live. So now the waiting was over for one thing, but definitely not for the other. And in the same process of all this, I'm still dealing with an unreliable vehicle, and everything is just not as easy as I thought it was going to be. 2 days before, the weekend before March 1st, my first day of work is supposed to be March 1st. I was invited to come look at the house and meet the landlord. Still didn't know if I had the place yet, but it was just kind of a walkthrough to find out if I still wanted it. She told me when I came in here that they were still working on the bathroom, and it may be another 2 or 3 weeks. But she wanted me to at least look at it and decide if I was interested still. But that I wouldn't have a bath or a shower for at least 2 or 3 weeks. I was okay with that. This was the place I wanted. This was the place I believed the Father had for me. By the end of that conversation, she had accepted my first month's deposit. And by the end of that conversation, 2 days before I started my new job, I got the place. Waiting for the Father, waiting for the answers, waiting to know if everything I was working for was going to happen. Being faithful in the waiting. The things I learned over this past year, one was be faithful in the waiting. 2 was don't wait alone. Lean on your sisters, lean on your family, lean on the people who the Father brings into your life. Wait well. That doesn't mean that you're not going to have anxiety. That doesn't mean that fear isn't going to creep in, but wait well. And most importantly, the Father is never early. The Father is never late. He's always on time. In all that waiting, in 2 years of waiting, I got not only the perfect job for me, the perfect place for me to live that's affordable, the Father also blessed me with a car, a reliable car. So I guess the moral of my story is don't grow weary in waiting. It's not easy, but it's worth it. And while you're waiting, stay faithful. He will bless your faithfulness. I am perfect proof of that. So thanks for letting me share my waiting story of how I went from living in a really bad apartment with a job I really didn't love to being in the perfect place with the perfect job. Oh, and only 10 minutes from my assembly. Thank you.